Hello and welcome to another segment of Stronger and Better. So glad to have you here with us on today. We know it's a wonderful week that we had. I'm so glad that the weather is switching over, and through that, we can see that the springtime is coming. So I know that y'all have the right happy spirit like I have. So thank you for joining us. Please make sure that you're saying hello as you come in. Let us know that you're here. Make sure that you're sharing this. I'm gonna go ahead and share mine right now. Make sure that you're sharing this. We're going to have a great conversation today. We're going to have a great conversation. We got two wonderful women that's going to be with us today, just sharing their hearts on. I called the show "How to Get Over Hurt" because there's a lot of things that's going on that's we've gone through in our past lives that have created hurt and pain and really have put us in strange positions. So I just want to make sure that we cover these issues on this show today. So please say hello to me as you come in there. I'm so glad everybody is here. I see people coming in now. And good morning, Paula. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. I see others are joining now. Please make sure you're sharing this conversation that we're having today. It's going to be a wonderful conversation. So glad to see others are coming in. Hi, good morning, good morning, good morning. We got Miss Tammy here. We got people coming in. Glad to see you guys this morning. Glad to see you. Good morning, Reverend Jones, Pastor Jones. What a powerful prayer service we had this morning. So glad to see you on today. But I don't want to waste a lot of time in terms of this introduction. Please, as we're going on, I want to make sure, please, also that as we are going through the show, that you can ask your questions. Put your questions in the feed. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you see a link to my YouTube channel. Please make sure that you go to the YouTube channel and make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm gonna put it in the link also in the feed here. That way you can go ahead and just click on it and join and subscribe. So every time we are on the air, it will let you know, and we have new material coming on. So I'm gonna invite my first guest in, and it's Reverend Evan David. What's up? How are you?
I am good. I am good.
Good. Glad to have you back with us on today. So we are talking today about a unique subject, and April is the month that we do National Sexual Assault Awareness.
Yes.
And I know you've gone through some things in your life, and in our private time with me, you, your husband, and just getting to know you. I know there's stories and there's situations that you have been in that would be good for our subscribers and our audience just to hear and just to know how to get over, because I know a lot of people are dealing with these situations and trying to figure out how to get through it. So I'm gonna go ahead. I want you to kind of share your story and start our conversation out on today.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing this type of platform so that we can discuss this topic. It's a topic that a lot of times people don't want to hear about, they don't want to talk about. But I would like to be a voice to share my story of how I am overcoming being sexually abused as a child. And I just feel like it's something that needs to be communicated, because there's certain stages that you go through in your life, and there's choices that I've made. And a lot of times I was not really aware as to why I made certain decisions that I made. But then when I look back, I realized that a lot of the decision choices that I made in life, they came as a result of me being sexually abused as a child.
Wow.
So during this month, it was something that was pressed upon me to be a voice, to share my story, and to try to help others that may be in a similar type of situation. So I'm just happy to be able to be on so that I can share my experiences.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start from the beginning and kind of tell us about your story and kind of where you are.
All right. So my story is growing up. Of course, we have working parents, and a lot of times when we were coming up, when our parents went to work, they relied on babysitters. So I was placed in the care of a babysitter that had children that were older than me, that were in the home. And a lot of times too, we often call people that are older than us, or people that we associate with that are not necessarily related to us. We call them our family members. And even with my own children, they call you Uncle Leroy.
Right.
And that was something that's just been a habit. So back then, it was a habit of, when you would think that people that were in your life were family members. And then it was not until later on in life I learned, well, hey, they really weren't my family members, but we called them and saw them as that. So in my experiences going to the babysitter, that's where the sexual abuse occurred. This particular family that I was being watched by.
How old were you?
I want to say it was in between, starting at the age of 4, and it probably went to maybe age 5 to 6.
Okay.
There was a period of time in there. So that's the time frame, because I know that there was a time that I was not in school. So I'm assuming that at that age, I probably most likely was around 4 years old if I wasn't in school.
Yeah.
So, and going to the babysitter, and there was things that was happening there, at the babysitting. And it wasn't until maybe like a couple of years ago that I actually sat down and had a conversation with my parents to discuss the events, because I was having issues in my life, in my marriage, that I didn't understand that the sexual abuse, that all of that contributed to it. So I had to kind of go back and revisit, which is painful, because it's painful to revisit issues that happened to you. But whether I revisited them or not, they were things that were happening that had to be addressed. So for me, and what I would like to say on this platform is that the first thing is acknowledging that something happened to you, and being able to speak and talk about it. A lot of times we don't communicate, we don't share, we don't tell things, we keep things hidden, and everything is a secret. And these are things that we don't talk about. So even in my parenting now, these are discussions that I have with my children. I talk to them about these kind of things all the time. We're always questioning them about if anybody has ever touched them. We give examples of different things, because communication is very, very important. So in my acknowledging,
well, let me ask something. So you didn't acknowledge until you were adult that this happened, or was this early on that you acknowledged, or let somebody know?
Well, I did. I think that people knew early on, but it wasn't me verbally acknowledging the specifics of what took place. Yeah. I think that things were known, things were speculated, but for me as an adult, acknowledging exactly the specifics of things that happened, and questioning why nobody did anything in my eyes about it. I just feel like, if my child experienced, or if I knew some of the things that, my parents knew as an adult that I know about my child, things would have been done differently. And I just think it's because of the time that we're living in, too, in some of the education that I have as being an educator, that the first thing I would have done is I would have contacted authorities. I would have sought some kind of help for my child, some kind of therapy, some kind of counseling, and that kind of stuff never took place. And so because it never took place, things were happening in my life in different stages, and things that I didn't understand. For example, as a young child, what happens sometimes in the case of being somebody that's sexually assaulted, sexually abused, sometimes they either become what they call promiscuous, or if they don't become that, they may lean towards having relations with the same sex and things like that. So in my situation, I became a child that was promiscuous. And I know that a lot of adults around looked at me, they saw certain behaviors, but instead of helping me and trying to address them, I was labeled. I was the fast grown child. And that's what, they would say. So, that's just the time that we were living in. And that's what we would call fast and grown. But being a child and being called fast and grown, something should have triggered in somebody's mind. Well, maybe I need to find out if something happened that occurred for that child to be that way. Nobody, starts, having those kind of situations and activities and doing that stuff at a young age like that. If something, possibly, could have happened to them. So you need to have the discussion and the conversation and, not, label and say, oh, she's fast and she's grown. No, let's have a conversation. So
can I ask you something? So for you, was your feelings as if that's something you needed, or where were you mentally at that point in terms of why did you feel you were fast or you was doing what you was doing?
I think that once it was introduced to me, and now that I'm looking at it in a spiritual aspect, just to talk about intimacy, period. Anytime that that takes place and it's the form of abuse, whatever is deposited into you is what you carry out. And that's why the Bible is right when it says that, sex is ordained for marriage. It's not ordained to be something that you do outside of marriage. And a lot of times what we don't understand about the sexual act, that as women, we are receivers. And a lot of times what's deposited into you determines a lot of your behavior. That's why it's something that is ordained, to be done in marriage. So a lot of the different things that were deposited into me from my abusers became, who I was, because it was something that I was harboring inside of me that I needed to be delivered from. Now, that's something that a person would have to have a spiritual eye to know. And even I learned through dating older, there was a lot of boyfriends that I had, and they may have had some habits that I never had. But once I started being intimate with them, then all of a sudden, I want to smoke marijuana. Like, where did that come from? I've never been a marijuana smoker. Now, all of a sudden, I have this taste. And it's because once we understand the impact of sexual, relations, then we can kind of put it together and see how this is the reason why sex is ordained for marriage and not to be done outside of that. And so I feel that a lot of the things that I was carrying out were those nasty demons that were deposited into me. So as I'm walking through life, this is what I'm doing, and I'm this promiscuous child and not really understanding or knowing why I'm doing the things I'm doing, but I'm doing them. And so like I'm an adult now and I'm in a spiritual place now, I understand and can look back and say, wow, this is why I did that. This is why I made that choice. This is why, I made the decisions that I made.
Right. So that's interesting. So when you acknowledged to your parents, how did that process go? That was later on now, right?
Yes, it was. It was what brought me to have a conversation with my parents is because after I got married, I was having some difficulty within the marriage. And a lot of the difficulty that I was having, as I spoke with my husband about it, it was determined that a lot of things that I was going through all pointed back to childhood.
Yeah. Uh-oh, I think she's frozen on us.
That's where, that's where all led back to. So I decided, well, you know what? I want to go. I want to have this conversation. I want to have it with my parents and just explain to them what I experienced as a child and to find out like where their mindset was, where their thinking, was at the time, because they were aware, of some things. And I just had questions. I wanted to know, if you were aware of this, why did you make the decisions that you chose to make? And I had to do that because that was on my path of healing, my path of deliverance, my path of forgiving, and, acknowledgement, and just knowing that this is not something that I made up. I would have a lot of flashbacks, and I still have them. There's certain areas that I will go to, and when I go to those areas, I have the memory. So if I ride down Vine Street and I look towards Edgewood Street, I see the house. It's a flashback. When I go down Flatbush Avenue and I look at where Rice Heights used to be, that is a flashback for me. I remember, and those things come to me, and they still come to me as an adult, even when I go through these areas. So because I was having all of these flashbacks, I just wanted some validation to know that this was not something that, I imagined, that this is something that really happened to me, and knowing that a lot of those things that happened, I was suppressing. And I was suppressing them because they were so painful. So now I need to know, how do I deal with this pain that I've suppressed? How do I, overcome this so that I can, live a healthy life? People see you and they don't know, what you've gone through. They just see the finished, product, but not knowing the things that you deal with individually as a person. So the conversation with my parents went very well. And I just understood at that time that they made the decision that they thought that was appropriate to make at that time. And they didn't realize how I would be affected later on in life as a child about it. And I just needed to acknowledge that, they, were aware that it was not my imagination. I had specific incidences that I shared, with them, and said, do you remember? Like, because I wanted to hear from them. Yeah. Yes, I know that happened. So that just brought validation, from me. So that was the conversation. And that leads me to have conversations with my children, to know that this is a much needed conversation, so that my child will come and talk to me and not be afraid to talk to me as their parent. Because back then,
actually, I was about to say, so were you afraid to talk to your parents or tell them what was really going on, or you just felt like you need to suppress it?
There was fear. I was afraid that I would get in trouble. There was a lot of grooming that took place with me. The place that I was at for the babysitting, the people, the mother and the father, they had 4 boys and they had 1 girl.
Wow.
And out of everyone that was there, 3 of the boys that were in the house that were, way, well over my age, 10 years or more older than me, 3 of them I was abused by. So as I'm going here, I'm having separate situations with 3 different boys in the same household. And I'm being groomed at the same time, into, doing some of the things that I did do. And I always knew, for me, that it was my reality, that I had no choice. I felt like I had no choice, that I had to be there. My parents needed a babysitter. This is where they had chosen. This is where I needed to be. So now I'm in survival mode. I have to do what I need to do when I'm in this house to survive. And if, this is part of it, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I don't want to make any waves for anybody. I was afraid of the babysitter. So that was another piece of it. And then when the situation was brought to light, and the adults did know about it, they did have a conversation about it. It was a private conversation that I was not a part of, but even after the conversation, I was still brought to the house.
Oh, wow.
I was still brought to the house. So that was my issue. Yeah. Because if my child tells me that, or if I'm aware that this has occurred, I am not going to continue to bring my child to the house but I understand that they felt like they had resolved the issue the best way that they could have done it. And so in that, situation at that time, I'm not going to say anything.
Right. No,
I'm not going to say anything.
That makes sense. At this point, I want to bring Dr. McIntosh on the line, because her story is unique also in the same.
Mm-hmm.
Before we kind of get into the questions and answer, I kind of want her to share her experience in the same manner. How you doing, Doc?
Wonderful. It's amazing. Thank you so much for having me a part of this platform. But as I heard the woman of God speaking, it just brought back to mind, because I was thinking, I said, well, I had 3 incidents of when I know that I was sexually abused. But to think about it now, after hearing her conversation, I knew it was 4 times. And the Lord just brought back to mind the first time that this happened was I was a child in Jamaica. And my mother had sent me, well, no, I'm sorry. It started with my dad. And I had to be about the age of 5 years old. Something had happened where he could not work. His leg, he got injured. And so my mom was the one going out, doing the majority of the work. And he would take, get my hair, comb my hair, get me prepared, and my brother prepared for school. But I remember, even as an adult, even when I came here to the U.S., I remember something happened. I couldn't shake what had happened, but somehow in my subconsciousness, I kind of buried it as though it wasn't real, as though it didn't really happen. But I just couldn't shake the fact. So I lived with it as though it was a fairy tale in a sense, right? But then I remember when I transitioned and I went to live with my aunt in the country, because things was really difficult for my mom. My dad came here to the U.S. and he was doing what he was supposed to do. So, she was going to take care of her children by whatever means necessary. She was hardworking. So I remember now going back to it, my cousin, who was much older than me, the girls and the boys would all sleep in the same bed. And we were on, at the lower end of the bed. The boys was on the, up on the other end of the bed. But I remember this night very plain, that he came and touched me inappropriately. I'll never forget that. I was so upset about what had happened, because at this time I had to been about 8 years old, because I came to this country around 10 plus. I went back to Bermuda, my country of birth, and then I came here. So I had to been around the age of 8. But I was so upset that I packed all of my things and I took the bus and went back to where my mom was, without them knowing. I packed all of my belongings and I said, I'm not staying here, because my aunt would not believe that her son did this to me. And I remember she slapped me in the face. She slapped me so hard that her fingerprint stayed in my face for a couple of days. And so I said, I'm not staying here. So I packed all of my things. Back then, they had these little plastic bags they call a scandal bag, because it was, you could see everything in the bag. So I packed all my things. I had all my little money saved up, and I got on the country bus and I went back to be with my mom. And I told her what happened, and she never let me go back there. But that kind of like severed the relationship of my mom with my aunt in a sense, because my mom couldn't believe that had happened. So that was, just going back there. Then when I came here in the U.S., I remember there was this young man. I was working at this restaurant, and no, I was an adult. I had a child, right? And this guy liked me, and I liked him. I like him as well. So I remember I told him, it's okay, you can come over. But I was a Christian at this time. I did not realize that saying you can come over means we're going to get busy. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? And I was living by myself at this time, but I was terrified for what had happened, because he came over and he took advantage of me. I was so hurt. I blamed myself. I began to rationalize in my mind, because here I'm an adult. I'm a Christian. I had made a vow to God that after I had my son, I was not going to be sexually intimate with anyone, because I didn't want my son to make the same mistakes that I made. I wanted him to wait until he was married before he was sexually active. So this guy came over, and he started getting, really aggressive with me. I remember him pinning me on the bed. He was much bigger than me. I couldn't do anything. I felt helpless. I felt hopeless. So I just literally just gave into it, even though I felt I was dying on the inside. I gave into it, and I said, well, maybe it's just my fault. And I still had to work with this guy. So just imagine how difficult that was. You understand? I had to work with it, but in my mind, I was telling myself that it's okay. I deserve that. For years, I dealt with that, and I never had the opportunity to say it again.
You say you felt like you deserved that?
I felt like, yes, at that time, I felt like I deserved it. I did something because I told him that it was okay for him to come over, not thinking that him coming over, that's where it's going to go. In my mind, that was never my intentions at all. But I never had the opportunity to really express to him, even up to today. That's how I felt. You get what I'm saying? That what he did, he violated me. He took advantage of me, because I was telling him while he was pinning me down, stop, I don't want to do this. I'm a Christian. Everybody at the job know I'm a Christian. They call me Angel at the restaurant, But then going now into my marriage. Okay. So sometimes I would wonder, is there something that I'm carrying? Is there something about me that's causing me to attract the wrong persons, the wrong individuals? Because if you don't get healed from all these emotional scars, it's like you're wearing a label without even realizing it. And you're attracting what you have not really dealt with. You understand?
Yeah.
And, going into my marriage, I remember there was a lot of verbal abuse, right? And that verbal abuse, it got to the point where physically, I really didn't want to be intimate with my husband, because I can remember all the things that were said to me. Nobody had talked to me this way. I wasn't brought up this way. You understand me? And all these words and these things that you're saying to me now, it's really affecting me to the point where I didn't care how I look. I didn't care. I was just eating crazy. I was just gaining weight, out of control. And it got to a point where I remember one day I was leaving out of the house and my son was in his bedroom. I don't know up to this day how my son heard what I said when my husband pushed me and was just, he had put his hands on me. My son came out of that room like it was lightning. And the next thing I realized, he had him pinned to the wall. You understand me? Because he put his hands on his mom. And after that point, it made it even more difficult for us to be intimate. I remember the last time that we were intimate, and it was like I had a block out. It's like I literally blocked out, because I can just imagine looking back at it now, all the things that had transpired leading to that, still dealing with the denial of what my dad did to me. You get what I'm saying? And I screamed out and I said, don't you ever touch me again. I just broke down crying. Don't you ever touch me, because I felt the violation. I felt like you didn't apologize to me. You didn't say that you were sorry for what you did, but now you want to take advantage of me. You understand? So that's just some of the things that I've been through. I can go back in another instance. I remember a time as an adult, I was preaching. And that's when the reality hit me of what my dad did to me, because no father should say to a child 5 years old, I needed can we just listen? We're grown. Yeah. I needed to suck on my breast. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. Why would a father ask his daughter to do something like that to him, right? So I remember while I was preaching in my own ministry, for some reason, the reality hit me the memory started rolling back of what transpired as a child around the age of 5 or 6 years old. And I was just in disbelief because all of this time in my mind, I'm thinking it's just a dream. It wasn't real. Now the reality really hit me, and I break down while I'm preaching. I started crying, and I was trying to figure out, God, why are you doing this to me? What's going on? 2 weeks after that, we had a women's fellowship. A young lady came to the fellowship, and I started sharing my testimony because now I can share what happened to me, because in the process of time, I began to deal with it, allowing God to heal me from this. Because there's times you can be preaching and you're still wounded. You're still not healed. You understand, right? Yeah. And so I began to share what happened to me. The young girl ran out of the room. I ran out behind her. She began to tell me her brother molested her. Her mom did not believe. I caught some fire because I wrote a book called Stop No More Negativity. When I wrote that book, my father, he's passed right now. His wife, they just started an uproar. I'm lying, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, she was like 30 years old, and my dad is in his 60s. So that tells you something, late 60s. That tells you something right there. Yeah. Then here's another situation. There was a young girl. I came here when I was 10 plus. There was a young girl that was in my dad's life from the church that we were going to. And this little girl was so close to my dad. I became jealous of her because he was giving her more attention than he was giving me. Come to find out years after that he was grooming this girl from the age of 8 until her second year in college. They were in sexual relationship. She told me he did all kinds of explicit stuff to her. That shouldn't even be named or mentioned. But I can talk about it because I'm free of it. I'm healed. I'm delivered. I'm set free. And I'm just thanking God for the victory. Amen?
Amen. Amen. I want to go back to you in terms of, she talked about, Dr. McIntosh talked about how this has affected her marriage, but how has this also affected your relationships in your marriage in terms of that past experience?
Well, it's affected me in a number of ways. I learned that even the profession that I chose to work with children was based on the fact that I was somebody that was sexually abused. And I didn't realize that the passion and the love that I have for children all came from the fact that this happened to me as a child. And now I want to put myself in a position where I can be an advocate, I can be a protector of children based on the experience that I had. In addition to that, in marriage, I didn't realize until maybe about a year or 2 years ago that it was something that affected my marriage. Wow. And it came because we would have conversations about intimacy. And then those conversations, my husband would point out some things that I would do. Yeah. And in pointing those things out, I had to realize that a lot of the things, even though at the time I couldn't understand and explain it, we came to the term to understand that the things that I do, I was doing due to the sexual abuse. So, for example, my husband would tell me that when it comes to intimacy, I'm the one that has to control it or dominate it. And that points back to sexual abuse. And the reason why is because as a child, I wasn't able to. So now I'm in a marriage. I'm in with somebody that I know loves me, somebody that's not going to hurt me. So now what's happening is I'm using, or the opportunity is coming out for me now to dominate a situation that I was not able to. Now, maybe for some men, they would enjoy that. But in conversation, about it, we were having an issue with it. So we had to talk about it. And I didn't realize that I was doing it. And it was not until he pointed it out to say that, you were in a situation that you could not fight your abusers. So now you're in a relationship with me as your husband, and you're using this as an opportunity now to fight me, but I'm not the one that abused you. So I didn't realize, I didn't realize it at all. But then I said, I really need to talk to somebody, about it. I have situations that I never even shared with my husband that he wasn't aware of until we started to have the conversation about it, to say that there's some times when I have to be in a certain frame of mind in order to even be intimate with him.
Yeah.
And it's at this time we use a lot of humor in our relationship. If anybody knows me and Gil, we're very humorous.
Hilarious.
A lot of times, he would say to me, now that we have come to this conclusion, and then till you seek the professional help that you need, I want to have an intimate moment with you tonight. So I need you to get together and talk to your committee so that we don't have any problems. And that's kind of our way of humor to deal with it. But it is something that is very serious, and it's something that I'm working through, and it's a process for me, and that I am continuing, to go through. But I didn't realize until a therapy session that that's what I was doing. I didn't realize that I had to put on a certain character in order to have that intimate moment in the marriage. So that's how it affected my marriage. But now it's a conversation to see now, how do we move forward from this point? And that's something that therapy takes. A lot of people feel like, you're in the church, you're a minister, your deliverance and everything is going to come from there. But on the platform today, what I want to emphasize is that sometimes it takes more than that. You need to sit down and talk to somebody, a professional. It's okay to go speak to a therapist so that they can help you to work your way through it. Because I realized that all this time I've been trying to work my way through it all by myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh yeah, maybe this isn't, working out the way that I thought it was going to, work out in my favor. So now maybe I do need to sit down and talk to somebody, and knowing that these powerful, painful experiences, are going to have to come out in order to get the full deliverance of what I do.
No, that's good. That's good. And I think people need to realize that. And I want to say also, before we go further, that this is not just women who's getting assaulted, but there's also men that's getting assaulted. And I think it's important what you say. We sometimes suppress so much, and we try to hold on to it, and we try to work it out in our own heads and our own minds. And we think if we just pray a little bit and God's going to deliver. But if you read the word, any process that you had to go through, there's a process in order to get through it, and God always provided a help. And I think it's important, like in terms of therapy and making sure that you're going to, you're not just alone. You're not the only one. And sometimes people think they're the only ones who have these feelings, the only ones who've gone through this. But it's important that we make sure that you're not on this platform. You're not alone. You're definitely not alone. There's a lot of people out here who's gone through similar situations or the same situation. And you need to talk to somebody about to release it, because there's no way your future relationships, your future environment can improve unless you let them loads go. You can't these burdens the rest of your life and think you're going to live a life of happiness and a life in which God wants you to live. But there was somebody sent me a message, and I'm going to read the message. And I kind of want you both to talk about it. It says, okay, I have a question and concern because I have also been sexually abused as a child till I was 12. I am 55 years old, and I struggle with talking about it because my abusers were my father, and I feel ashamed of the fact that it is my father. He made amends with me at the age of 12, but I didn't understand the amends at the time. He also made amends before he passed. He told me that my life was a mess because of him. I have not been in a relationship in 25 years, and I desire a relationship, but I have a hard time with letting people into my life. I pray often, but my healing has not been fast enough for me. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that or speaking to her life,
Wow.
her or his. I don't know who this is.
Well, going back to what the woman of God stated earlier, I think at this moment, well, not think, I know she needs to go and speak to a therapist,
Yeah.
get some outside help, because, you don't want to, the fact that she has a desire to want a relationship. You
Yeah.
understand? And I know even when I got out of my marriage, I had to take some years. I didn't want to be in any relationship. I needed time to heal. I needed time to go over, to process some things and to make sure that I am healed, that I am whole. Somehow those scars are still a factor. If it's for 25 years and you still feel like you can't engage in a healthy relationship, I honestly believe it would be an injustice to yourself, because one, you desire it if you don't seek outside help. You have to be able to release that, to let it go. I remember working with a young lady some years back who was in an alternative lifestyle. And, I worked with her to the point where I got her to literally be able to say the person's name. That was what she needed to do to release herself from that pain. Something broke. So she needs to definitely seek some outside help so she can get to that place where there's a release, there's a breaking. The memories are going to always be there, but you
Yeah.
got to get to a place where you're whole. You can live a normal, decent life, because if not, any relationship that you get into, if that person just acts one way that reminds you of your what happened to you, there we go again. And that person is not deserving of that. They deserve. So I applaud you for not getting involved in any relationship, because you deserve to go through or to deal with your scars, your pain.
Yeah.
You understand? You don't need to bring that into a relationship. So you're in a good place now to go on and get the help that you need, because God has a blessing for you. But we have to take the initiative to do our part so we can get the healing that we need. Amen.
Amen. In addition to that, forgiveness is very important. And although abusers, seek out forgiveness, there's still a scar that is left on your life as a result of what you encounter with them. So for me, I have the pictures that I keep of my abusers, and occasionally I'll take the picture out and I'll look at it, because it helps me to see where I am when I look, at their pictures.
Wow.
And in addition to that, I know I was talking to my husband, and so I was like, why are you keeping the picture? And I keep the picture of the family, because when I look at it, I pray, for the family. I pray for, everyone that is attached to them. I know I was not the only one. The two of my abusers, I know they were placed in jail for being caught for doing, what they did to other people. I did come face to face with one of them as a teenager. As I was walking down the street, he drove by, and as he was driving by and I saw him and he called my name, I started to run. And as I started to run, he's following me and he's yelling, and I stopped, and he just said, he said, I want to say that I'm sorry. And he said that to me, and I said, okay, but I kept running. I kept running, and I understood that he's carrying something too, because now he has guilt, and I don't know how God is dealing with him, with what he did. So, in that, what I, want to impart is that forgiveness is a big thing, but also we still are people that are scarred and still have things in our life that, we need to be healed from as a result, of it. Even today, he tries to friend me on Facebook. I'm not ready to be your friend. You know,
right.
It's still, you know, let's let bygones be bygones, you know. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that, for me. And I just think, the acknowledgement of it and wanting to seek out help and knowing that, I'm not the only one that this has happened to. And, to find a place where you just seek out healing, for yourself. And it's good, as was already mentioned, that the individual that posed the question is realizing that I have a problem and I have an issue and I know that I need to get it resolved. And that's the first step of, helping with the healing process.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let me ask you a question. So do you think in your lives after these situations happen, that you became a person that also became abusive in some of your behaviors with others in terms of relationships or even with your family because you thought they knew, or how was that?
I didn't come abusive. I think that what happened with me is I became defensive. I became advocate. I became voice. And that's what happened, with me. I am a very verbal person. I don't hold, too many things. And if something is disturbing my atmosphere, I like to resolve it. So that, is conversation, is communication. And I feel like that's where I've used all of my energy in that area, and to let other people know that I want to be an ear, to listen, and that I want you to know that, this happened to me and I can share and experience this and just tell you my testimony of how I am coming through it. I'm not 100% through it, but I'm coming through it. And that's how I used mine. I do know of people that have told me of people that have done things to them. And I haven't, been mean towards those people at all. But I pray for them and I tell the person, this is your story. So you're the one that has to bring that out. I can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself.
Yeah, because I know sometimes people say hurt people hurt people. So how
that's true.
When you've been hurt and you don't even know it's coming out, you just hurting other people. And
right,
even when you talk about relationships and people get in relationships and how they treat the other person based off of what they're going through, even as a child, and they can't figure out why. So I'll let Dr. McIntosh.
Yes. Well, for me, what happened was it made me overly protective with my son. I was very cautious of where he went, very, very cautious of that. I protected his environment with everything. I wanted to know every step, every move, because in the back of my mind, the question was always there. And I remember if he would be in the bathroom too long, I'm coming to clear that door. Listen, what you doing in there? Don't be touching the willy too long. You just put the soap and a little water on it, and that's it. And it was screaming, Ma, you're gross. But I just wanted to know. And every time I sent him to a babysitter, I would ask him, to Jonathan, did anybody touch you inappropriately? Did anybody do anything? I just always wanted to know. And I believe that's that protective thing, because, you don't want what happened to you to happen to them. But one thing, and I'm so grateful for, is that I've never harbored unforgiveness. The only regret that I have is I wish that I really had an opportunity to just really talk to my dad and just really tell him how I felt about that, what had happened to me. And maybe that would have opened him up to really talk about it, because I know it's something happened. There is no question in my mind that something had happened. You understand? It's not a myth. It's not a fairy tale. I know that it did. And but I've forgiven. I've let go. I don't believe that it would affect my relationship, because as a matter of fact, in all of the relationships that I was in, for some reason, I was always the one that seems like I'm getting the short end of the deal. I mean, I don't know how much more loving or caring or compassionate I could be. You understand? And so I'm here finding myself. I'm asking the Lord, forgive me. I'm asking them to forgive me for what I don't know. You understand? Because, and you know what? Here it is. Somehow psychologically, I was still dealing with those hurt because somehow I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I must have done something why you're treating me this way. And that all stemmed back from what happened in my childhood, what happened with my, through my cousin. I must have done something. What happened with me working with this guy and inviting him just to come over for something very simple and plain, just to get to know you. I must have done something wrong, so yeah. I don't know if I answered the question. But
no, I think you did. Okay. We got a short time left, but I'm interested to know also how are you getting your kids to kind of communicate and about when they're in issues like this, and how are you creating safe environments not only for your kids but even your friends or people to kind of share and get through this hurt?
Well, for me, in communicating with my children, like was already said, we always do what we call the screening. We're always asking questions. Has anybody, touched you in places? We're very open, with our children at home. And we just make sure that they're aware of what's right and what's wrong, and keeping that relationship that our children will feel comfortable in communicating if something inappropriate did take place, whether it be mommy, whether it be daddy, grandma, grandpa, aunties, uncles. We make a practice of not really letting our children do overnights at people's houses. And, we're particular on who our children are with. And I know that even in my family, they'll tell you, if you need a babysitter, send them to Ebony and Gil's house, because we take if you don't want to be bothered with them, you stressed out, just come bring them over here,
Right.
And I've always, played that role from a child all the way up till now, that I just, try to be the protector so that I can make sure that, harm is not coming to anyone. When I talk to people that have been sexually abused, I do encourage them to seek out therapy, to talk to a professional, and, to just pay attention to the things you need to do as far as self-care, caring for yourself and the healing that you need. Don't try to, sweep things under the rug, but it has to be something that you talk about. You have to talk about it. And then after you talk about it, then you have to start the process of healing. And so when I talk to my children, when I talk to other people that have been sexually abused, this is where, the conversation leads, even in forgiving, because like you said, there are people that have abused, and in return, they abuse other people. Yeah. And in that time, they don't realize the reason why I'm acting this way is because of what was done to me. And so that's when therapy has to come in, and that almost makes it a little easier to forgive people that have done these kind of things, because you understand then, well, they did it because it was done to them. They didn't know any better. It helps when, dealing with decisions that were made that were not the right decisions, that, okay, that person really didn't understand or, weren't in a place to make a appropriate decision at that time. So that helps with the forgiving process.
Yeah. Dr. Mexican?
Yes. Well, I mean, my son is grown. I only have one child, and he's grown. He's, seems like he came out very well, but, I can even go back into my past, like my marriage, whenever something happened that I thought was not appropriate, that he should not have seen or heard, I would always go and, try to fix it and say, Jonathan, this is not how a man is supposed to treat a woman. So just like what she said, that open conversation, it, being abused, it caused you to be, for me personally, to be very open and candid about, what I want him to be aware of and to be example of, and if I can leave any little thoughts or any encouragement to anyone, listen, you got your whole life ahead of you. You have to forgive yourself. You got to see that there is greatness within you, that there's purpose for your existence. Somebody needs your testimony. Somebody needs what you have. So you have to allow that healing process to take place. Forgive, they always say forgiveness is not so much for that individual as it is for you. You understand? Forgive yourself, write a book, do what you got to do. However you got to release that. Go to a mountain, scream, holler, cry, whatever it is. Get out. But you don't want to live the rest of your life with being scarred or in a place where this thing is holding you hostage, right? Use it as fuel for the fire to push you into your purpose and your destiny.
Yes.
What a great conversation we've had today. I'm gonna tell you, it's just amazing how even Ebony, you talked about how so often these things are deposited in us, and how both of you talked about, at the end of the day, those deposits have to be released. And it's not necessarily for the other person, it's for ourselves, for our own growth, for us to really make sure that we are going to fulfill the destiny that God has for us. And it's interesting how Satan would try to manipulate the mind of the young to affect them in the future so their destiny would never be established. And if we can make sure we establish not only in our youth, but in the adults around us that don't harvest this stuff. Don't hold on to it. Let's not carry this stuff. Make sure we're getting the help that we need, getting the therapy we need in order for us to move to the next level and in order for us to release what the devil has tried to put on our backs. The word was clear. He's a deceiver. He tries to distract us. He tries to kill us in any manner he can. And the best way for him to do it is to start with our mind. And so I thank both of y'all for coming on to the show. I thank y'all for having this real transparent conversation. It's necessary. I think a lot of people, once people see it and hear it, a lot of people can be healed from this. And look, we got to let this go. We got to forgive. You might not forget it, but you got to forgive and you have to move on. So I want to thank y'all. I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. And I look forward to thank everyone for joining us for another Stronger and Better. We're here next Thursday at 11 a.m. I love you and appreciate. Make sure you hit that subscribe button at the bottom. Go ahead, go to the link and really and stay in tune to what we have coming up in the future. I'm putting it in the feed now. Love each one of you. I'll talk to you later. God bless you.